Tech Snippets Today with Joseph Raczynski.
All right, Shaw, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to it. I mean, we're at Consensus 2025. This is probably my 7th or 8th Consensus. It's been insane. Started off in New York. Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. What have you thought so far?
I just started this. There was the Blockchain Futurist conference before too, so I got to meet some people there. So I'm just kind of getting into it, but I like it. You know, a lot of friendly faces here.
Yeah.
You know, gonna meet a lot of people I've talked to on the internet. So.
Perfect. Yes, I mean, this conference tends to be great. I just came back from Token 2049 in Dubai, and they have one in Singapore coming up, but energy is palpable. So I want to hear a little bit more about your story, your backstory, what led you to Eliza, all these fun things.
Oh man. I've been a programmer for a very long time. I'm very interested in the technical side of this thing. And there was a kind of an inflection point around 2020, 2021 when OpenAI, you know, we had seen Transformers and AI coming up, but it was not very good. It was like, okay, I remember like getting GPT-2 to complete a poem for me and, you know, kind of getting that going. But then when GPT-3 came out, it was like, oh, this never gets any worse than this. This was an inflection, like, you know, a year before ChatGPT even. And so once the beta for that came out, I had met some people who were working at like AI Dungeon. I actually co-founded a company with one of them, and he's now doing meme coins as well. And AI Dungeon was one of the first, like, hey, let's take a AI model and give you like an infinite world you can play in. And that really opened up my mind to like, oh, this is a thing. And so I'd been I was very interested in virtual spaces and multiplayer and thinking about, okay, AI is going to come into this and we'll have like this really interesting data capture sort of simulated world, but that's all like 10 years in the future. Where is the starting point? And I had started with 3D and kind of that space, but once it was clear the agents were just good, I started really getting into like, okay, well, how do I put these on social? How do I put them in Discord and Twitter? And we put agents on Twitter in 2022, right? Like,
wow, I didn't realize that.
A friend of mine showed me a screenshot where I was like, hey, you should check out my agent project. You can like make a digital twin of yourself. And it just did not catch on. People did not get it.
It's wild.
And we gave, so I started a company called Magic with another guy, Parzival. He has a project called Project 89, which is really interesting, another like meme project. We blew up together kind of thing. To make AI agents that you could like no code build agents, and you could give them Ethereum wallets, and we had the whole thing. They just did not. It was like a little too early, you know. And also the gas cost, like you know, it just wasn't quite there. But then I kind of come up with a lot of the people in like the News research team and like the people who made Truth Terminal. This guy Andy, and he had created Infinite Backrooms, which was a kind of a clone of this thing called World Sim, which had been created by News Research. They just announced their like 40 billion parameter decentralized training. So it's the largest decentralized model yesterday. It's huge deal. Shout out to them. And so that was like all coming up, and I just happened to have been working on this open source agent framework for a while. Like I tried to build a company on it, and it was that Truth Terminal moment, Mark Andreessen kind of doing that, where we were like, well, we already have the tech. You know, Truth Terminal was cool, but Andy's approach was, I'm not going to let it be on the internet just saying stuff. And I was like, no, let's just go raw. Let's just see what happens. And nothing bad happened. You know, we made the most offensive agent. Like people did not believe he was real. So we took Degen Spartan, who was a noted personality, who was very dirty mouthed and honest with people, and we just fully recreated him, downloaded all of his tweets, recreated this, and people were like, well, that's obviously fake. I mean, you're just a bunch of dudes writing those messages. And so it's like, no, it's open source. You can use this, and people saw, oh, I can just deploy this. And so we had something like, people were deploying over 500 agents a day during January, right? So it was over 50,000 Eliza agents launched, mostly to show meme coins, but some really cool utility projects. A lot of people starting to build out platforms and like trading agents and all this stuff on top of it. And so that's kind of how we got here. I always felt like crypto was a really essential component to that kind of future where AI is deeply integrated. And you know, we were a little bit too early before, but now it feels like, wow, it's really starting to happen this time. So
it is wild to watch, like how AI is now going to be infused with crypto, blockchain specifically, and how this all could potentially work. So just making one quick step back, like, could you tell us a little bit more about what Eliza Labs does? Like, what people, if they're totally unfamiliar with this, which maybe a few. What is it? What are you guys working on?
So we started as AI16Z to build an autonomous investor, kind of a joke. You know, I mean, anything in crypto needs to be both like serious and funny. I think that's the secret to success.
It does.
And so, but underneath that was a serious technology that we've been working on for a while. However, it was really like a research project. Like, okay, we demonstrated the core loop, but you couldn't just download it and run it as a desktop application. You have to clone it and compile it, be a dev. It was not very friendly. So we've been really working to try to build an AI agent that anybody could run. You could run it on your desktop, you could run it as a server, you could host 1,000 agents or just one for yourself locally. You could run it with a local model, so fully local in the box, or you could run it with OpenAI or Gemini or any of your favorites. We're totally agnostic. And this kind of comes back to, well, what is an agent? I feel like intelligence has already been commodified. Like OpenAI, Google, they have it down, and there is no way we can compete because it's not about skill or knowledge or creativity. It's about compute.
Right.
We are in an age where the biggest server farm is going to win probably, and right now Google is on top, so that seems to be the truth. But on the other side of that is, okay, well, how do we leverage that intelligence into doing things in our world? And that seems to be very, very open still. And you don't have to have 10,000. You don't even need a single GPU. You could do all of this on a MacBook. But you do have to think a lot about a lot of other problems that are individually complex and quite numerous around the model. Oh yeah, even if you have an open source model, you got to scale it, you got to deploy it, you got to do all that stuff. And the same thing with agents. I've got this really intelligent brain, and it can run in a loop and do stuff, but I need it to connect to my social connectors, my email. It needs to be able to track contacts and relate contacts across platforms, which is a really hard problem. And so those are the kinds of problems that we're trying to solve. Like, how do I build an entity graph across Twitter, Discord, Slack, and then relate those together so that I know the Joe here is the Joe here. You know, that is I'd say the hard problem of agents we're trying to solve right now, and we're about halfway through that research. We have a working prototype of this, and we're now like, how do we make this smooth? How do we make it so that a user can see what the entity graph is, and building, you know, graph memory and all that stuff as well. So that's what we do. We do memory, entities, the hard problems of agents.
No, that's amazing. I really appreciate that background. When I think about agents, I think about like there's absolutely immense potential. People are still trying to understand where we're going with this, how we're going to do it. To your point about identity being like a foundational component of this, what does that look like? Is that Web 3 based, or is that something like a Web 2 that's trying to be bridged over to Web 3 so that we can actually start to onboard more people so that they can leverage the agents? How do we go about doing that?
I think I'm not a put everything on chain kind of person.
Okay.
I'm a put certain kinds of things on chain, and I think the things that need to be on chain are for sure money, and I think identity. Yeah. For a lot of reasons. You know, I have had my Stripe account deleted for working at a business where they didn't like some of the things we were doing, even though I don't think they were wrong. I've had a lot of issues with PayPal or Coinbase or these kinds of things, as many people do. And there's just no way I can go sign up for 10 PayPal accounts for 10 agents. It just cannot happen. So I think we think of a wallet as like a place to put your money, but it's actually not. Like in crypto, the money actually stays in the contract on a ledger, and all you're doing is saying, I am me, hey, hello, and that's an incredibly important thing, right? So as a developer, I can spin up an Ethereum or a Solana private key, like a BS58 key, with one line of code, and I could be like, you get a key, you get a key, you get a key, and every agent can have a unique identity within 5 seconds. Yeah. That would be totally impossible in Web 2.
Right.
So at the core, cryptographic signing tools are the primitive that we need for anyone to prove they are themselves, and agents are just like humans, need that as well. So I just don't see a world where we don't have, where this is not a deep, fundamental part of this, basically.
No, that's perfect. It makes a lot of sense to me. You spoke about Solana and Ethereum, and there's another half dozen at least blockchains that are sort of vying for this space. How do you think this plays out? You think that there's going to be just innumerous numbers of both layer 1s and 2s that are just messing around with this? Like, how does this actually, you have such craziness right now. How do you bridge them all? How do you start bringing that together? Which do you choose?
Well, I think that the problem with technology is that it's exciting until it goes mainstream. And then it's really boring. And the reason why crypto is where it is, and people like meme coins are not the best way to make money, but they're the most interesting and exciting and moving up and down. There's way more reliable ways to make money, but they're all very boring, so nobody talks about them. And I think that crypto is generally going this way, where you will just use whatever wallet you use, Phantom, MetaMask, they're all going to be super abstracted across every chain, and you're just going to say someone the other day, I was like, well, what chain are you using? Because I was like trying to tech support. They're like, well, I'm using Phantom. And I was like, oh, that's where we're at. Okay, cool.
Wallet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that says a lot about what consumers care about.
Yes.
And so I think that when consumers care about this, they won't even know it's blockchain.
Right.
Which may be a little bit disappointing for a lot of people who are like, oh, I was there when it was hard. But that's where it's going. And that's how like every technology gets boring in a good way, and it's not like so scary to where to put my money. From an agent perspective, this is all just going to be highly abstracted. I don't know, you want to say $1,000, you want to say 5 SOL, like what do you want to say? Right. It doesn't matter because it's just like a bag of tokens that can go on any network anywhere. For us, for our new version of Eliza, we have abstracted chains so that the agent just has a wallet and you say, well, okay, if it's connected to these chains, then it can check its balance and send and interact. So it doesn't really care what chain it's on. Because, bridges are hard because you have to create a deterministic exchange between like one chain and another, but an agent kind of serves as a bridge without needing all that complexity. It's just like having any intermediary. Like if we all trusted some guy named Bob, we could just have a exchange, right? He just does all that. And so agents kind of do that for their own wallet. They are their own bank. And so that makes the whole thing just way, way easier, right?
Excellent. So one of the things that I think about a lot is the biggest organizations in the world are still trying to create their own platforms for agents, right? So you have Microsoft and Google, among many, many, many others. I don't think that they've gone down the path, unless you know, I mean, you certainly would know much better than I do, of sort of adopting wallets, like a wallet-centric world. Have you started to see that play out where they're like moving in that direction, and what's their rationale in terms of their agents potentially having a wallet or having access to money, funds to do something, whether it's booking my trip to Bermuda or something like that, where you're saying, agent, go do this, you have $1,000 or USDC, whatever it is, in there, go to town. I trust you at this stage, which is another leap that we'll have to make. But how are the biggest organizations trying to move in that space where you're already there working on these things?
Obviously I talk to a lot of people who ask me, how are you going to win? Like, how can you compete with OpenAI? And I'd say you compete with them by competing in places they can't even compete. OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, they all have a lot of incentive to bring you to their website, to bring you to their platform, bring you to their search engine or whatever their experience is. And they have very little incentive to let you go to their competitors. And we are sitting here like, well, the reason our agents work is because they work on Microsoft Teams, Slack, Discord, Twitter, you name it, like we are building connectors for it. And I just don't see Microsoft saying like, hey, let's make a Discord bot, or a Slack bot.
Okay.
They would make a Teams bot, and they are, and they're working really deeply on that. And OpenAI is like, well, let's make a social network because we need the data collection loop that we don't have. And we need to see other people talking to each other because talking to an agent's not very useful data, but seeing humans talk is very valuable data. So they're like, well, let's get everyone to come to ChatGPT and make it a Twitter clone, I guess. Okay. That's at least what publicly has been stated. So they're all like stuck in their own platform, and I think that agents win by being a multi-platform thing. I just don't see how any of them win. I think that they're like, they can't do NSFW, they can't do hyper-personalized, they can't, and the reality is like, from my AI Dungeon experience, like over half of the people using generative text AI are using it for NSFW. Yeah. I don't want to be in that space, but I do think it's worth noting that like, if you're trying to beat the big corporations, just don't play their game. And so they are not looking at crypto wallets because crypto wallets are part of deplatforming.
Right.
That's not their platform.
So what would they do though? I mean, are they going to use like, is MasterCard now that they have some sort of application or some currency that they're going to be able to do, because they have to do things that are split super quick, easy, low latency, inexpensive for transactions, maybe like percentages of cents, like quarter cents, whatever it is. How does that even work in that world if you're staying on the traditional rails?
Well, I mean, OpenAI already has 100 million credit cards in their database. They already have everyone ChatGPT subscribed and any of those features, so they have no incentive to go outside of their own thing. So we're like over here doing a very different thing.
Like microtransactions, will they be able to do that sort of thing? Or?
I mean, they already do. Like the API and everything you use is all pay as you go. Like if I generate one GPT-4o image, I can go look at my balance and it's down 1 cent basically.
Okay. All right.
So like the incumbents in this space are already heavily invested in their own platforms, and it's going to prevent them, I think, from entertaining these other kinds of options. The other thing is that we're talking about one-on-one agents, me talking to OpenAI, to ChatGPT, versus an agent that's out there doing stuff on my behalf and interacting with other users and agents. And that's just like an exponentially harder problem that I don't think none of them are even trying to solve, because it starts to point in a direction of deplatforming that they don't want to go. And so like they're not even asking these questions, if that makes sense.
Crazy. All right, 2 last questions. The first is very basic, but I'm just kind of curious. I was thinking about it last night. I've been talking about APIs for ages. Does that nomenclature go away because an API eventually is sort of like an agent in and of itself? Or is that just purist, like APIs, it's like a data feed, and maybe it's not necessarily an agent? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of ways to slice this, and it probably is going to be a yes and. I don't think that, so we have dumb APIs where you just say like, okay, I have to send some object of information to that. As long as it fits the right shape, it'll work and I'll get a response, and I can parse that with my agent. Then I have smart APIs. I just send it some text and it gives me back what I want. And that's like the hot new thing. And then we have full-on agent, where my agent just talks to another agent. And I'd say that those 3 paradigms are all going to kind of come to fore, but definitely like we're already on the API paradigm. And the smart API paradigm seems to be the next thing. And this is kind of MCP is pointing toward this, right? Of like a smart API. MCP is just APIs, but what it's doing is it's kind of saying, hey, we have a sort of unified framework for sharing this information. But then the last thing, like Near Foundation's working on this. I know a bunch of people who are working on this idea of like, well, the agents will actually go find other agents. I'm skeptical on multi-agents. Like I've kind of gone back and forth. On the one hand, why not just have a super agent that does everything? And then I have my super agent. It's just contacting APIs and smart APIs. Or I have a bunch of agents and they each do small things. And I think that for some things, like for a ChatGPT, I want a super agent. I want that agent to be super smart. But if I'm building like a social agent, I might want an agent that only can do like Twitter social stuff, and then I can give role access control to my community to control that, for example. So I keep, or a more realistic thing is, you have a company and I have a company, and you don't want to share your secret sauce and I want to share my secret sauce. So we each make our agents, and then we're like, well, they can talk to each other to give that, I can pay you for your secret sauce. And that's where a lot of people are going, but I do think there's a lot of underlying assumptions of things that are solved that are not solved. I have a Twitter mutual who's like a naive AI dev. He's this very smart guy, and he was like talking about he had just gone and talked to his project manager. It was like, dude, everyone thinks this stuff is like 95% good, but it's more like 80%, and 80% is not reliable enough to really use in production. And so I think we're still like on a lot of the hard problems. And a lot of people are hand waving, agents, billion agents solve everything. It's like, just get one to work. It's like the metaverse, a billion users, just get one room that I can have fun in for an hour, No,
totally.
So.
You alluded to it, you brought up Near and Ilya, who is natively AI-centric, which is so great because now it's like he was doing blockchain for a long period, it still is, but now it's like this is all fused together, so it's great to have him up there talking about these things frequently. It's great to see. All right, so you alluded a little bit to it, but your vision on where this stuff goes in terms of, I know it's difficult, I don't want to pin you down for timelines or things like that, but what does it feel like things are really going to start taking off? Are we talking about still a few years out, where the average Joe would actually technically start using these things? Again, they're not going to say, maybe they say it's my agent, but they're not have to deal with all the stuff behind the scenes to necessarily to program it, to tweak it, to do any of that stuff. When are we going to start seeing like me have my own personal agent where let's pretend I'm not technical, I'm just able to start playing around with it, and it's going out and doing a few little basic things, has its own wallet, so has some money that I've dedicated, I trust it to do that. Is that 5 years? Is that less?
I think a lot about, like, before we turn this on, thinking about virtual reality and like, it's going to be here and next year, and it has to succeed. Apple's doing it, how could it possibly lose? And it's like you are just up against a certain amount of physics, and just there's a certain amount of lessons that have to be learned that haven't been. So I think it's really hard to say. Now, what's weird is, like, personally, I talk to an AI way more than I talk to people. I am sitting there, with Cursor and Claude, and like if I had to build a presentation, I'm like, I made a script to generate the slides, GPT-4, I'm like way deep in it. And so as a programmer, we have a thing called, we have Cursor, and OpenAI just bought Windsurf, which is their competitor. But these are AI coding agents. So I tell it what to do, and it just grinds and I just watch it go, and I'm like, okay. So already in certain sectors, like agents have completely just changed the game. And then there's, in other sectors, it's like just wildly harder, and obviously people are like just getting hip to, like legal is an example of a place where obviously agents would be hugely beneficial, but also if you get one thing wrong in court,
you're done.
Yeah, so a lot of problems, like code, it's fine. I can just refresh and be like, no, that's wrong. It's a very low risk task. But I think that as we get into higher risk tasks, we're really hitting a wall where we're just not quite there yet. So it's certain, So I would say for me, for anyone building, agents are here today, man. Like it's on. But for the average user who wants an agent that can do things on their behalf, I texted, I'm like, hey, can you do some research for me and buy this thing on Amazon? I think they were still probably a few years away. And it's not that I can't get it to work today, but I can't get it to work every single time consistently at scale. There's just a lot of problems that we have to build toward. Even Google and everybody else is on the same road, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Siri still kind of sucks.
No, oh my God. I just do not understand why Apple has not made that a little more robust. Their whole AI picture, I think they're working on, but they're not quite there yet.
The story internally is they have a new Siri, they just can't release it yet because it's not reliable enough.
Okay, fair enough.
Which makes sense.
It does happen. There's one chatbot that I use frequently that's like, it's the most ridiculous. There's two of them. There's Maya and there's the male version. And the name of the company actually is eluding me right now, but it's the most instantaneous, quickest reaction, like conversational. Her voice is sultry. It's just, it's out of control. It is. So you put that on the layer at the top, interactive, and then what's below it, fill in the blank, and it's amazing. So we'll get there at some point in time. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Shaw. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Great chat.
Thank you.
Tech Snippets Today with Joseph Raczynski.